Feeling known and appointed by God was a really big part of my calling. I didn't feel like I fit the mold of what an officer is. I had very little experience in family services. Most of my experience in the Army had always been in the church. I felt a calling to the church to be a pastor and a shepherd of God's people. And yeah, I just didn't feel like I fit the mold of that person who's out in community and representing the Army. And just through my journey of kind of accepting my calling, I just really felt God saying, hey, I know you, I made you, and knowing that God wasn't going to call me into something that didn't fit who I was. And so I could just trust that He was calling me into something that I would be able to do, and that's something that He had made me for. So I think that my calling impacts others kind of in two ways. First is the really obvious. I preach and teach every week, and I would hope that that would impact those that sit in our congregation. But I think also I would hope that just in the way that I interact with our staff, our volunteers, our clients, our congregation members, that would be impactful as well. I remember when we were in training college, we were tasked with coming up with a vision statement for our life, and mine is still in the workshopping phase, but it's about reflecting God's joy and goodness to other people, just in the way that I live and interact with others. And so I would hope that my calling as an officer would impact others just by showing them the goodness of Jesus.
For me, that kind of sense that God was setting me apart for something really came about a year after I became a part of the Salvation Army Church back in my hometown. But I wasn't sure if I was really ready to take that next step to become a Salvation Army soldier. For me, it would have meant some lifestyle changes. And so in the fall of 2014, I was at a young adults conference. And while I was there, I felt God speak to me. Probably the most direct way God has ever spoken to me. And it was in that moment that God said to me very clearly, I still can remember, He said to me, Joshua, I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for you, but I need more of you. And that moment, there was this surrender in my life, surrender to any sort of apprehension or hesitancy I had to becoming a soldier. It just kind of all vanished in that moment. And it was really, answering that call of God on my life to become a soldier that really kind of paved the way for me to then journey into officership as well. I want how I live out my calling, how I live out my officership, how I live out just being a follower of Jesus, to be in such a way that when others see me or when others, interact with me or speak with me, what they're seeing and they're interacting with is Christ. That my life would be a testimony to Him, a testimony to the work that He's doing in me, but also the testimony to the work that He's doing in our world. And that my calling, when I'm being faithful to what God has called me to do, then that will then direct others to Him and direct others to live lives that are faithful to Jesus, both within the church, but also those that we serve on a day-to-day basis as well. This is encouragement I would give to anyone, in the church and wanting to kind of discern would be, start with being faithful to Christ. Start there. That's a very fundamental level in our spiritual walk, is our faithfulness to Jesus. And so when we can learn to do that well, I think that will really help kind of encourage, kind of grow that skill set that could very well possibly lead to officership.
I think very similarly, just follow Jesus. I think that the more that we get to know Him, the more that we'll just naturally want to tell others about Him and to serve Him. And there's just so much joy in just, again, operating in the way that God has created me to be, and knowing that He sees me and knows me and has tasks for me to do.